Hello, folks. I was planning on playing on the dispatch, but I'd figure I'd go through and see why we even have access to this dispatch in the first place. So, this is Dave Remaker being cross examined by Jerry Buting. Called as a witness herein, having been first duly sworn, was examined and testified as follows. Please be seated. Please state your name. Please spell your last name for the record. Witness Dave Remaker, Remiker. Jerry Buting, are you a detective in this is that correct? Yes. How long have you been a police officer or in law enforcement? About 13 years. And how long have you been a detective? I've been an investigator since January of 1999. Part of it included narcotics. Are you employed by whom? Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. And on the 4th, 5th, in that time period of last year, were you also employed? Yes. And in your experience as an officer or detective with the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, have you had experience in applying for search warrants? Yes. Have you had training to do so as well? Depends on what part of the search warrant you are talking about. I don't recall any specific training in reference to applying for search warrants. Never had any training on how to prepare an affidavit in order to get a search warrant on the job or otherwise. On the job experience, that type of training. Okay, you do know, though, that when you prepare an application for a search warrant, and in fact, when you prepare an affidavit in support of that, that you must truthfully in the information that's provided. Definitely. Could you tell me your first became involved in the Teresa Halbach matter? I believe it was on Thursday. That would have been November 3rd, I believe. And how did you come about? I was paged. I was requested to come into the sheriff's department. I arrived there and I met with some of the detectives from our department in Calumet County. We have that call. He calls in. Actually, yeah, he is paged. He then calls the sheriff's department and asks what's going on. He's at basketball practice. You can't hear me. I don't see why not. Can't hear me well. Okay, I'll turn my volume up. You're asked to come in by who? Lieutenant Link. Probably. That's true because when you hear the dispatch calls, they say Lieutenant Link paged Remaker and Jacobs. He was there, yes, as well as the investigator from Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Investigator Dietering, correct? At the time, was it your understanding that you were being called to assist with the Calumet County matter or a Manitowoc County matter? Or which? Missing person. But an investigation involving which department? Well, the female that was missing was from Calumet County. They had received some information that some of her last contacts included an address in Manitowoc County. Okay. And did that address, in fact, turn out to be the Avery property in Manitowoc, Town of Gibson? That was one of the locations, yes. Okay, did you have an occasion to check with Stephen Avery on Thursday night, November 3rd, as to whether he had information about the missing woman? I did not. Someone from the department did, correct. And that would have been Sergeant Colborn. You know, he did go out to the property, or was it by phone? I believe you went out to the property and spoke with Stephen, and maybe some additional people, okay? And the following day, did you in fact have an opportunity to go out to the Avery property as well? Yes. Were you asked to do that, or did you do that on your own? I was asked. By? It was Calumet County. I believe one of the main contacts we had was with Investigator Wiegert. Okay. And do you know what time it was when you went to the Avery property on the 4th? 10:30 a.m., 10:30 in the morning. Oh, correct. Did you have a warrant at the time? No. And did you approach the trailer in which Stephen Avery resided in? At one point, yes. Did you know the actual address of that? 12932 Avery Road? Correct. Okay. Did you speak with you are aware from the investigation that there are other people that live at the same general area compound, correct? That was the first time I had ever been on the Avery property. Okay. I had no idea who lived out there. So at the time, you didn't know. You were directed to go to the specific address. Correct. and the specific address related to the trailer resided by Mr. Stephen Avery. I believe that was the information I received. Yes, and when you drove onto the property, you had to turn right and go down sort of a dirt road to get to the end of the road before you reached the particular trailer. Isn't that right? I recall when we first got out there, I had no idea where to go. I wasn't sure where his trailer was. At one point, we went down the road that leads to Stephen's trailer, yes. And you knocked on the door? Was he there? No. Did you enter without him being there? No. After a period of time, did he arrive, or did he come up to you? We attempted to make contact at the trailer and then went to another trailer. That was the trailer that was resided by Barb Yonda. And then, there was no contact there, we started leaving. As we were driving down the road, Stephen and I believe Dolores arrived, made contact with us. They were in a golf cart. When you say us, you and we, you are referring to myself and Lieutenant Link. Lieutenant Link was actually out there with you. Yes. Okay, and so did you talk with Mr. Stephen Avery at the point? Yes. Did you explain your purpose was in being there? Yes. And what was that? What did you tell him? I told him that we were investigating a missing female. I seemed a little surprised. I told him I explained to him that he had contact with Sergeant Colbert the night before, and then I asked if I could search the trailer. Okay, did he agree to do that? Yes. Gave his consent freely. Appeared to be cooperate fully? Yes. And so, did you walk back or drive back to the end of the road where the trailer was located? Yeah, he told me to go ahead and search. I told him I wanted him to come with me, and then he drove to his trailer, and then we followed in the golf cart. So he was willing to let you just go into his trailer and let you search without him ever being there. I believe so, yes. But you wanted him to be there? Correct. And when you walked into the trailer, did you look around to the complete trailer? Yes. And can you just briefly describe what the layout of the trailer is inside? Attorney Fallon, objection, relevant. Mr. Buting? Well, we're going to get to it eventually, so to make the record clear, I think it's helpful. Court, we may get to it eventually as part of the case, but I'm hoping that the testimony here will focus on the motion. And I'm in trouble understanding the relevance of what he found in the trailer or what he observed in the trailer to the motion. Well, we do have a burden to establish some standing, and some of these questions need to go towards that. So, court, I'm not sure I follow that. I can rephrase it. When you went into the trailer, did it become clear to you that Mr. Stephen Avery did in fact reside in the trailer? Yes. Okay. You had no reason to doubt that? No. He let us in. Okay. And you went and searched all the rooms. And I opened up all the doors and closets at the time, right? Yes. Attorney Fallon, Your Honor, I'm going to renew my objection as the relevance of this. If counsel is trying to lay foundational evidence for a standing argument, as I already argued last week in a written pleadings, we do not challenge the fact that Mr. Avery has standing to challenge a search of his residence of his garage. Our argument goes to everywhere else. I'm not sure how this questioning on November 4th is relevant to the events of November 5th. Mr. Buting, nevertheless, Judge, we do have to make a record to establish standing, as Mr. Fallon has pointed out, and this is detective was there and can testify about Mr. Avery's standing to object to this warrant, which included the particular trailer. That's what I'm trying to establish. The court, I don't know that that's disputed. I think that's established already. I don't know how. We had found the various rooms related to that, so I'm going to sustain the objection. All right, Mr. Buting. In any event, you walked through the trailer and then came out, right? Correct. Did you find anything inside that gave you a reason to think that Teresa was there or had been there? I had no reason to believe that Teresa was there. Okay. And then, did Stephen allow you in? Well, let me go back for a second. There's also a detached garage that's near the particular trailer. Isn't that right? Yes. And it has a door on it, correct? Actually, two doors, a service door and an overhead door. Correct. And were those doors opened? I don't recall. Did Stephen allow you to go in and look into the garage as well? I didn't ask to go in the garage. I'm sorry? I didn't ask to go in the garage. Okay. And you didn't do anything to prevent you from going in the garage, though. There wasn't any discussion about the garage. Did you look around to see if there was any evidence that her vehicle was on the property somewhere in that area? We had looked as we were driving in and out. That's about it. Did you walk around any of the property, the side or back of the trailer? No. Did you see any burn barrels located nearby to Stephen's trailer? On the day of the consent search or before I actually filed the warrant? I know there's a burn barrel out there from the contact out there. When I exactly seen them, I don't know. Did it appear to you that the burn barrels you saw were in some way connected to Stephen Avery's trailer? That somehow there was some connection between them as opposed to anywhere else? Well, when I was out there on Saturday and Sunday, and I seen the burn barrels at the point, obviously, I sensed that there was some connection between Stephen's house and the burn barrels. Yes. And that's because of the proximity of the house, or what? Yes. The barrels you were referring to were in the... Are you talking about one or more barrels? I believe there's one, just prior to you arriving at Stephen's trailer, and on the right-hand side of the driveway. Sort of in the front still, off the trailer, correct. And did you at any point see a burn pit of the rear of the detached garage next to Mr. Avery's trailer? Are you still talking about that Friday or into the Saturday, Sunday? What date are you talking about? They're quite different. For purpose of clarifying the record on this question, we can include your subsequent Saturday and Sunday. Yes, I seen burn pit back there. And then the burn pit appeared to be connected in any way to Stephen Avery's residence, as opposed to any other neighboring ones. It's right beyond the garage. So your answer would be, yes it is. Did you do anything else before you left the Avery property on November 4th? No. So you and Detective Link came together in the same vehicle? Correct. Now the following day, Saturday, November 5th, were you working? Yes. Do you know what time you started? I'm going to stop right here. When Detective Link and Dave Remaker arrived on Stephen Avery's property, they went directly to his trailer and they ran his plates because Chuck or Earl, it may have been both of them, asked Stephen where his truck was, and he said at home. He said, well, your plates just got ran on the scanner. Problem is, we don't have any audio at all for the 4th. Whatsoever. None. Do you know what time you started? 8 a.m. Did you receive a call from Investigator Weir that morning? Yes. Did you know what time? I would say between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. and did in that, I'm talking about the first conversation that you had with Investigator Weir. Did you have a discussion about what volunteer searches? Yeah, he gave me some information about some volunteer searchers. And did Investigator Weir tell you that there was numerous volunteer searchers who were coordinating their efforts to do some search of the properties within Manitowoc County? Not those exact words, no. Have you reviewed anything prior to your testimony today? Here we go. Yes. And what was that? My report, recorded phone calls, recorded radio transmissions, and those transcribed, those radio transmissions, are you talking about? No. Did you bring those with you today? I did not. Where are they located? At the Sheriff's Department. With the radio transmissions I'm referring to, there's a recorded conversations, phone conversations between myself, Investigator Wiegert. I also reviewed the radio traffic that I participated in, and those recordings what day are they referring to? Saturday the 5th? So this is around the same time of the phone call that we were talking about, correct? And thereafter, as you were approaching the Avery property later? Yes. How many different recordings do you listen to? Phone calls or radio conversations? Do you have a tape recordings of the phone calls too? Yes. Which ones? There were a couple conversations between myself and Investigator Wiegert prior to me arriving on the property. Were those while you were located still at the Sheriff's Department or while you were on the road? At the Sheriff's Department. And would that include your first conversation with Investigator Wiegert that morning? I believe so. And so, approximately how many phone conversations did you have or did you review before the testimony today that concerned your conversation with Investigator Wiegert? I believe there's 2 phone calls between myself and Investigator Wiegert. And did both of those take place while you were still located in the station? Correct. And the radio transmissions that you are referring to that you reviewed, were those ones that took the place after you left the station? Correct. And included period of time from the time I left the south parking lot of the Sheriff's Department at the time shortly after I confirmed the VIN number of the vehicle. And did those radio transmissions all include your conversation? In other words, statements you were making on the radio? Yes. And will you get back to the recordings in a minute? But you also indicated that you reviewed your report. Yes. Part of the testimony today? Correct. And by report, are we talking about a portion of a 22-page report prepared by the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department? Yes. And that goes in sort of sequential chronological time, right? The way it's organized, for the most part, yes. Is that something you dictate? You're part of it? Yes. And then it gets transcribed by someone? Correct. And then you review it? Yes. To make sure it's accurate? Yes. And that's done shortly after the events that you are investigating? Right. I can tell you the report was probably dictated about a week after the last day I was out there. So we waited a whole week to write a report. Okay, now would you agree with me? Not to mention, Colborn didn't make his report of talking to Stephen Avery on the 3rd until 8 months after the fact, when he's instructed to, when Manitowoc Sheriff's Department is writing their summary report of their investigation of the Hallbach case. Now, would you agree with me, since reviewed your report, that in your report you state, quote, I, Detective Remaker, was working at the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office. Is that an abbreviation for Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office Department? Yes. At which time I received a phone call from MTSO, Calumet Sheriff's Department. Right. Correct. Investigator Mark Wiegert. Investigator Wiegert indicated there was numerous volunteer searchers who were coordinating their efforts to do some searches of the properties within Manitowoc County. Does this all sound familiar with what you reviewed? That's what my report says. Did you bring it in with you today? Yes. Do you want to retrieve it quickly? Sure. I believe we're on page 4 of 22. Got it. Okay. And do you also go on to say your report, quote, Wiegert indicated that several searchers were willing to go to the Avery property on Avery Road to search junkyards and the salvage yard? That's what it says. They also say, quote, Investigator Wiegert stated that several of the volunteer search parties would be coming to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office within the next hour to meet and coordinate efforts. Right? Correct. That's what your report says. Correct? And finally, Investigator Wiegert requested my assistance for this follow-up. Close quote. Yes. That's what your report says? Right. Yes. And is your report true and accurate? It's close. I try to make a complete and true report. I assume, right? Absolutely. And when you say it's close, what's it based upon? What? Well, during my conversation with Investigator Wiegert, in the first conversation I had with him, indicates that he says to me, just so you know, the family is doing their own thing out there with searches. In case you get calls of trespassers, in case you get calls there's people walking in the ditches, the family is out there doing their own thing. That was my first conversation with him. And this conversation that you were relating right now, is that based on some independent recollection of you have now, or an event? That's based on my review of my phone calls. That's based on a review of the phone calls. Did to prepare for today's testimony? Yeah, I mean, some of the conversation I can recall, but I was able to, I guess, verify a little bit more once I reviewed that. Anything else about your report, or there's anything about your report that's not true? Well, I guess I misunderstood Investigator Wiegert, in which at some point I thought he was bringing some people to our department, some volunteer searchers to coordinate our efforts. That was the case. Well, is that what you put in your report? Oh, correct. So, is your report not true on that? I would say that the part is a little. It's not quite accurate. Not quite accurate. It doesn't really cut it. My question is, did Wiegert say several searchers were willing to go onto the Avery property to search the junkyard salvage area? That part, there was a volunteer searchers out there. That's accurate. Another conversation that I had with Wiegert after that was, he calls me, he says, hey, we have a change of plans. think we should re-interview Stephen and another individual. And he also indicated that there were some volunteer searchers who were willing to go out and do some searches in different locations. And he had thought that he would meet up and talk about that. It was possible that we would go and try to get consent from the Averys to search the salvage yard. That was the second conversation I had with him, and all the recollection they were relating to us now comes from the review of the phone calls. A little bit of both. As I review the phone calls, I remembered a couple more things. Independent recollection of the exact date. Jerry Buting. Judge, at this time, I request to take a break. We had not had the opportunity and did not even know of such recordings. Even though we have requested them, I think at this point we got to take a break so that we can have opportunity to review those before I complete my cross-examination of Dave Remaker. Mr. Fallon, we don't have any objection to that. Counsel and I were unaware that the Manitowoc actually had recordings of those. I believe we had some information from Calumet County, other things that they had recorded, and quite frankly, never dawned on us that they would have recordings or something 10 months old. So, all right, does anyone have any idea how long it's going to take to get these together? I know they're in the process of getting it all together. There's a lot of information, a lot of recordings. I don't know where they're at. I believe they're finishing up. Let me ask this, if I may, Judge. Go ahead. Detective, is it possible? Apparently there's a lot of radio traffic related to that day. So let me ask this question. Is it possible to obtain, for instance, a recording of the telephone conversation you had with Investigator Wiegert, and perhaps would you say, gentlemen, first hour radio traffic, and then we can wait for the rest of it may not have pertinence to all to the balance of the motion. What do you think? If it was, is there any way we can get it, probably have to do it within an hour. Fallon, within an hour. Buting, can I ask you this? When you reviewed them, were they on, did you just review them through some central system, or were they on cassette already, or what? The individual that was collecting information, doing the recordings, I requested that I be able to listen to a few things, and he had centralized and itemized those specific ones. And I think they are all on some hard drive, some main database within the department. When you listen to them, had you had some headphones plugged into something or what? No, they were just right on the computer. Okay. Is that right next door? Correct. Let me ask this. What are the other witnesses the parties anticipating calling with respect to this motion? Does the defense have any further witnesses? We do, Your Honor. But I view this new information as extremely important to all of the witnesses. If we're talking about actual recordings of communications that are directly at issue here, that is, Detective Wiegert's testimony, Remaker's testimony about their contact with volunteers, and all that. If the second record somewhere, then it's obviously very important, and it would really potentially impact how I would question other witnesses. If I had the information, which I had requested, but I apparently was in the process of being prepared, but not yet prepared to us, the court. What I'm wondering is, if we can't continue talking testimony either on this motion, one of the other motions, while people of the Sheriff's Department are getting the recordings together, so perhaps over an hour and a half break, lunch, the parties could listen to the recordings, but not put us too far behind schedule here today. I understand perfectly. Before you complete your examination of Detective Remaker, are you going to want to listen to those recordings? I also acknowledge that it may well play a role in your examination of other witnesses on a particular motion, but I would prefer that we not be wasting time with everybody here while somebody at the Sheriff's Department is compiling information. I would hope that some over the Sheriff's Department could be instructed to get that together so that it's ready over the noon hour and we can take testimony earlier. Additional testimony on the motion, or move on to one of the other motions before the lunch break. Let me ask one other question. First, Detective Remaker. These phone calls that are recorded, that you reviewed, do any of them involve discussions with an individual by the name of Ryan Hilligas? That name is never mentioned. I'm sorry. The name is never mentioned. Or any phone conversations with Hallbach family? No. Or Patricia Strum? That's all it is. I think 2 phone calls between myself and Investigator Wiegert. and then some radio traffic for myself going out to the Avery property. I have it kind of written down, word for word. I have it written down almost word for word that the conversation is, all right, we could have called one witness, then if we could take a break, and if Dr. Remmer could instruct her to contact the sheriff's department and expedite making copies of those. They should ask for all the recordings, not just what Remmer reviewed, in my opinion. Talking about phone conversations as well as radio traffic right up to the point where you say you stop reviewing it. That is, I think you were looking at the VIN number or something. There's myself talking about the VIN number quickly, and then the dispatch contacts me and tells me that there's somebody waiting at the sheriff's department. The media shows up, sheriff's department, and that's about it, where it ended. Okay, so all that, up to that point. After that, if you haven't reviewed that for today, then we'll deal with it later. Correct. Is someone at the sheriff's department in the process of transcribing those conversations? We're in the process of providing radio, telephone, various types of communication that's recorded to the defense in its original form. In its original form, my fucking ass. Court, all right, why don't I excuse you at this time? You can contact the sheriff's department and ask them to get that together. We'll move on to the next witness, okay? And hopefully we'll be able to review over the noon hour when it's excused, meaning we're waiting for Ryan Hilgis. So, yeah. They had a heads up, and that's why we don't have all the audio. We don't have no audio for the 4th whatsoever. Here, I'll show you guys. We got the radio transmissions from here to 11:03.
Four six dispatch.
416, go ahead.
4164.
10-4.
432.
For the radio transmissions.
Go ahead. One route.
I mean, the first one's 3 minutes 29 seconds. Second one's 13
I'm in
seconds.
church driveway right across from the residence.
Last one,
What
21 seconds.
any idea who that plate comes back to? You want to let Andy know?
And then it goes from the 5th, 11:04 a.m.
Negative.
all the way up until 4 something. And then it's the 7th, 8th, the 9th, and the 10th, 11th, and through the 12th. So all the radio transmissions between the officers and the car,
432.
dispatcher, yada, yada, yada. But we'll go
You got a phone?
They're not time-stamped at all, whatsoever. There's 2 lines we have.
973-5362.
4201 has 49 calls, and the 4202 has 30. Problem is, there was 3 dispatch lines. There was 4200. It was displayed in the paper. And we had
Red 278, I'm sorry.
Myself,
I'm trying to go through all this audio.
I'll be out at a
I'm
residence.
not going to
On boy.
live, so
South 310.
stay tuned, and catch y'all later.
10-4.